June 6th, 1944. The biggest invasion in history. But Hitler? He was asleep. His staff was terrified to wake him. They knew his temper. Hours passed while thousands of soldiers stormed the beaches. When he finally woke up, he said something shocking. Something that revealed his biggest mistake and sealed Germany's fate. His generals couldn't believe what they were hearing. What he said that morning would haunt them forever. The morning everything changed. It was June 6th, 1944. The sun was rising over France. Thousands of Allied soldiers were landing on the beaches of Normandy. This was D-Day, the biggest invasion the world had ever seen. Boats filled with American, British, and Canadian troops crashed through the waves. Planes roared overhead. Explosions echoed across the coastline. German soldiers on the beaches were caught completely off guard. They fired back desperately, but more Allied troops kept coming, wave after wave after wave. Back in Germany, Hitler's headquarters was waking up. Phone calls were flooding in. Something massive was happening in France. But there was one major problem. Hitler himself was still asleep, and nobody dared to wake him. His staff stood frozen in the hallways. They whispered nervously to each other. They looked at his bedroom door. The fate of Germany hung in the balance, but the man in charge? He had no idea what was happening. The dictator who slept in. Hitler had a strange routine. He often stayed up until 4 or 5 in the morning. He would talk for hours with his inner circle, sometimes about war plans, sometimes just rambling about art or history. Then he would sleep until late afternoon. His staff knew this well, and they knew one other thing too. Never wake the Führer unless it's absolutely necessary. Hitler's temper was legendary. Officers had been screamed at for less. Some had been fired on the spot. Others had faced worse. So on this morning, as reports poured in about the invasion, his commanders faced an impossible choice. Wake him and risk his fury, or wait and lose precious time. They chose to wait. Hours passed. The Allied forces dug deeper into French soil. They secured beachheads. They moved inland. And Hitler? He slept peacefully, completely unaware. The delay would cost Germany everything. But what he said when he finally woke up was even more damaging. The fatal mistake. When Hitler finally woke up around noon, his staff rushed to brief him. They showed him maps. They explained the situation. Thousands of enemy troops were on French beaches. Hitler listened. Then he said something that stunned everyone in the room. He called it a diversion. He was convinced the real invasion would come at Calais. That's a different part of France, further north. Hitler believed Normandy was just a trick, a fake-out, to draw German forces away from where the real attack would happen. His generals tried to explain. The evidence was clear. This wasn't a diversion. This was the actual invasion. But Hitler wouldn't listen. He had made up his mind months earlier. He had fortified Calais heavily. He kept his best tank divisions there. And he refused to send them to Normandy, even as the battle raged, even as his troops begged for reinforcements. "Let them come," he reportedly said. "We'll crush them at Calais." But Calais never came. And by the time Hitler realized his mistake, it was too late. The tanks that never came. The German soldiers at Normandy were fighting desperately.
They needed help. Specifically, they needed tanks. Germany had powerful panzer divisions nearby. These were elite armored units. They could have pushed the Allies back into the sea. But Hitler personally controlled these divisions. Only he could give the order to move them. And he refused. For hours and hours, he refused. His field commanders sent urgent messages. "We need reinforcements now. The enemy is advancing." Hitler's response? Wait. The real invasion is still coming at Calais. Military historians called this one of the biggest blunders of the entire war. By the time Hitler finally agreed to send the panzers, it was late afternoon. Nearly 12 hours had been wasted. And by then, the Allies had established strong positions. They had anti-tank guns set up. They had air support circling overhead. When the German tanks finally arrived, they were picked apart from the sky. Allied planes destroyed them one by one. The delay had been catastrophic. What could have been a German counterattack became a desperate defense. And it all came down to what Hitler believed that morning.
Why Hitler got it wrong. So why was Hitler so convinced about Calais? Why did he ignore the obvious truth? The Allies had run a brilliant deception campaign. It was called Operation Fortitude. They created fake armies, inflatable tanks, dummy planes, false radio transmissions, all positioned near Calais. They even put General Patton in charge of this fake army. Germany knew Patton. He was their most feared opponent. Hitler's spies reported seeing this massive force. They took photographs. They intercepted radio messages. Everything pointed to Calais. And Hitler believed it completely. He had convinced himself so thoroughly that no amount of evidence could change his mind. This is what makes the story so fascinating. Hitler wasn't stupid. He had won many battles through bold decisions. But on this day, his stubbornness became his weakness. Even when his own officers showed him proof, he dismissed it. "This is what they want us to think," he insisted. He trusted his intuition over reality. And that decision changed the course of the entire war. The man who demanded absolute control made an absolutely catastrophic mistake. The generals who knew better. Hitler's military commanders knew the truth. Field Marshal Rommel had even predicted it. Rommel had inspected the Normandy beaches months earlier. He warned Hitler, "If they come, they'll come here." He begged for more defenses at Normandy, more troops, more tanks positioned nearby. Hitler had ignored him. Rommel was overruled. Resources went to Calais instead. On the morning of D-Day, Rommel wasn't even at his post. He had gone home to Germany for his wife's birthday. When he heard the news, he rushed back immediately. But the damage was already done. Other German commanders were equally frustrated. They could see what was happening. They made the right calls. But in Nazi Germany, military decisions flowed through one man. Hitler had centralized all power. He trusted no one else. This wasn't just about D-Day. Hitler had been overruling his generals for years. Sometimes it worked. Often it didn't. But on June 6, 1944, his need for total control backfired completely. While he slept and then stubbornly clung to his wrong theory, the war slipped away. History was being written on those beaches, and Hitler was writing Germany's defeat. What happened next? By the end of D-Day, over 150,000 Allied troops had landed in France. They had suffered terrible casualties.
Thousands died on those beaches, but they held their ground. The Germans had missed their window, the one chance to push the invasion back into the ocean. Hitler's delayed response had cost them everything. Within weeks, the Allies had complete control of Normandy. They built up massive supply lines. More troops arrived every day. Tanks, artillery, supplies, everything they needed. From there, they began pushing across France. Liberation had begun. Hitler would never recover from this mistake. The war in the West was essentially over. It would just take 11 more months to finish. His generals knew it. Some even began plotting to assassinate him. They saw that Hitler's leadership was destroying Germany. But Hitler never admitted he was wrong about D-Day. Even as his empire crumbled around him, he blamed his commanders. He blamed traitors. He blamed everyone except himself. The man who built his entire image on being a strategic genius couldn't face the truth. He had failed catastrophically. And it all came back to that one morning when he slept, when he refused to listen, when he said no. The words that sealed Germany's fate. So what exactly did Hitler say that morning when he finally woke up? According to witnesses, his first reaction wasn't panic, it was dismissal. "So they've come," he reportedly said calmly. Then he added the fatal words that defined the day. "This is not the real invasion." Those 6 words captured everything wrong with Hitler's leadership: his arrogance, his stubbornness, his refusal to accept reality. He had convinced himself so completely that he couldn't see the truth, even when it was literally invading France. By the time he changed his mind, the opportunity was gone forever. Military experts still study this moment today. It's taught in war colleges as a lesson in leadership failure. One man's ego, one man's mistake, one morning of delay, and the course of World War II changed completely. The beaches of Normandy became the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany. And it all started with Hitler sleeping through history, then refusing to believe it when he woke up. That's what Hitler said when he heard D-Day began. And those words still echo through history. Hitler's reaction when D-Day began changed everything. His response to the Normandy invasion was disbelief and delay. Hitler said at the D-Day invasion revealed fatal arrogance. His reaction to the Allied invasion was dismissive and stubborn. Hitler's commands on D-Day came too late. His orders during D-Day were based on a false belief. There was no Hitler D-Day speech rallying his troops, just silence, sleep, and a catastrophic mistake. One morning, one man's response, history turned forever.